25 minutes to 8 with Brian on Pacific Breakfast. A very warm welcome to Niue Language Week 2017, our theme for this year. Koe wanga hau Niue, koe e a te fua he tangata Niue. The Niue language is the heart of Niue people. I'm joined in the studio this morning by Andrew Lovell, Managing Director and Founder of Home Ownership Pathway, for week 2 of our Home Ownership Pathway Bootcamp. In week 1, we covered personal finances, organising them to work for you to achieve home ownership. This week, we are looking at deposit for first home buyers. And joining us this morning as well is Amanda Morrill, Head of Communications and Education with Simplicity. A very warm welcome to the show this morning, Andrew and Amanda. How are you both?
Great, fantastic.
Awesome, thank you.
Good, and you're looking good, especially for a Monday morning at this time of the day, eh? But yes, very good. Okay then, so when we're talking about deposit, what is a deposit type of incentive or schemes that can help us?
Well, majority of families out there are trying to build that deposit, or banks want to see how much skin we can contribute to buying our first home. And I'll say a majority of our families that we're working with, about 80% of them would get this from a thing called KiwiSaver or the superannuation scheme called KiwiSaver. 20% would probably get it from a gift from other family members, like existing homes that they can release equity out of, and just a small percentage actually have that in savings, actual savings. So yeah, majority of our families would get this from KiwiSaver. So
before we go to Amanda with regards to KiwiSaver, Andrew, so just to clarify, in terms of if you are a first home buyer, is it 10%, 20% you're needing?
Yeah, well, 20% is standard, what the standard banks require, but what we can do is work with government incentivized banks at the moment and get 10% deposits. So there's 3 banks that the government are working with that will allow us to do a 10% deposit. So that's basically what we need to aim for, especially in this market. So for example, if you're looking to buy a house around 650, so 10% of that is 65 grand. So majority of our families come to us and they got, they've been in KiwiSaver for 5+ years, and they didn't really realize that they could access the first home buyers grant and get an extra, let's say maximum of $10,000 for being in KiwiSaver over 5 years. So when you sit down and crunch the numbers, if you've been in KiwiSaver for 5 years, etc., and let's say you've got $40,000 between you both, really you've got $50,000 now because you've got an extra $10,000 you can put towards that.
That's amazing. That's amazing. What I love, over the course of this series is learning new things, especially because, many of our listeners, our viewers on Facebook, of course, really aiming towards getting that home, that dream of the 1/4 acre section with the white picket fence, yada, yada, yada. But let's look now. So in terms of deposit, but we're talking about how KiwiSaver can help with that. And so, Amanda, KiwiSaver, can you give us an overview? What is KiwiSaver and how does it work?
KiwiSaver in a nutshell. So it was started 10 years ago. It was primarily set up to get people saving for retirement, but they also allowed an early access clause whereby you could use some of your money towards a first time home. So as it stands now, that still applies. You have to have been in KiwiSaver for a minimum of 3 years before you can access your funds. So it's important to understand your intentions, your reasons for going into KiwiSaver, and Andrew will explain more on that in terms of the contribution levels. But if you're gunning for your first time home, that's your goal, you really do. It's an excellent facility for saving because, as you know, it's so easy to spend our money from paycheck to paycheck. Whereas if you allocate a percentage of your earnings towards KiwiSaver, you know that that's sort of locked in and you're going to track really quickly or much quicker than you would otherwise by just sort of, I put $20 here, $20 there for your first time home. So you can contribute up to from your work earnings 8% of that, your gross income. Your employer is only obligated to put in 3%. But if you add up those two together and say you're thinking about buying a house in 5 years, you're going to sail along towards getting that deposit together really quickly. And with this additional facility, not many people understand that about the Home Start grant. You've got another potential $10K that you could access. So eye on the prize, understand why you're going in there, get some advice. It's really not that complicated. Wonderful resources, facilities on the internet to kind of get some structure into place and go for your goals.
In terms of when you make those contributions, though, Amanda, correct me if I'm wrong, it doesn't just sit like in a bank and, go for interest in it. It actually gets, invested on your behalf? Is that
Correct.
the way? Yes.
Yeah. So KiwiSaver, important to know, it is not a term deposit. You are invested in the stock market. Depending on which fund you're invested in, and there's a whole scope of them, you can loosely categorize them into conservative, balanced, or growth. That asset allocation will determine roughly what kind of returns you're going to get. So I don't want to get too overly complicated for your listeners, but if you're in a growth type fund, you're going to be more heavily invested in the stock market. So as you know, the stock market goes up, it goes down, it's all over the place. Generally speaking, over a long-term framework, you're going to get higher returns. So it's also good to get some advice around that, because if you're thinking, oh, I'm going to max out and get the highest returns possible, well, understand that within that there is an inherent risk that you need your money in a year's time. Maybe the market's going to dip down, so it's a little bit more volatile. Whereas a conservative type of fund, it's going to be more heavily weighted in cash and fixed interest. It's not going to go quite up and high as those returns, but it's going to be a bit more stable for you. And then the balance is somewhere in between.
When we talk about the word risk, Amanda, is there that possibility? Yes, I'm putting money in, but then ending up with, depending on how it's invested, you can actually lose money?
It is an investment, so there is no firm guarantee that you get like a term deposit where it's locked in. Having said that, most KiwiSavers, pretty much all of them, because it's heavily regulated by the Financial Markets Authority, are well diversified. For example, within Simplicity, all of our funds are invested across about 3,000 investments over 23 countries. So, chances are one country is not going to be affected as adversely as another, so it's not going to be an extreme punch. It's going to be a bit more moderated because you're in a diversified portfolio. That's not the case with some other investments out there where you're putting all your eggs in one basket, say the property basket, say the big bubble burst, and then you're going to face a higher risk there. So it is a more diversified, which sort of modifies your risk within KiwiSaver. And again, depending on which fund you're in, that risk reward equation will vary.
Awesome. Back to you, Andrew, with regards to contributions and how those work and etc.
Yeah, well, as Amanda mentioned, 8%, is the top rate that you can contribute. And we like to advise or get people to say, well, if you can get into that highest threshold, the 8% of it's almost like a forced savings plan. So you don't really see that money, but you're just working with the money that you're getting paycheck to paycheck. 8% of your annual income is going into KiwiSaver. So, over the course of 3 to 5 years, that's quite a lot of money that people can accumulate. And a lot of people, as I said, that we're seeing have been in the KiwiSaver scheme for over 5 years. So they've accumulated quite a large amounts of KiwiSaver amount that they can contribute towards the deposit. But as Amanda mentioned before, get in that KiwiSaver at the highest rate, and then just understand which fund to tick that you would like your money to go towards. So whether it be a balanced, growth, or conservative fund, it's quite a simple process, and it's quite a simple process to sign up as well and to switch over. And we recommend Simplicity. We work with Simplicity because obviously they're going to save you money and fees, and that means more of your money is going towards getting that return.
In terms of the Home Start grant, can you talk to us a little bit more about that in terms of qualifying? If you're going for a Home Start grant, do you have to be, on KiwiSaver to qualify, and maybe other main qualifications around a Home Start grant?
Yeah, that's, as long as you're in there for 3 years, once you're in there for 3 years, every year after that to 5, you get $1,000 per year for an existing home. And then, so that's a maximum of $10,000 or $5,000 for an individual, or $10,000 for a joint application. And then, so obviously they've got income thresholds as well. So under 130,000 as a couple, as a joint application, then you qualify for that. And in Auckland, it's I think the rate's $650. You can get up to an existing house up to $650, because obviously the house prices are a lot more expensive in Auckland than anywhere else in New Zealand. So they've got regional caps as well.
So it's designed for middle income earners or lower. So we don't want to be advantaging people who don't really need that extra advantage. It's geared to get the average Kiwi into their first time home.
And for new builds as well, it's twice that. So it's $20,000. It's $2,000 per year to buy a new build home. So one's for existing homes, one's for new builds. You know, if you can get a developer or home out there that's available at 650 and you're under that threshold, you know, it's a new build, you know, you could get on it, get it built, and you get $20,000 from the government. But the main thing is the government, as Amanda said, the government wants us to buy homes. The government wants to get us into home ownership. So this is part of their incentives and schemes that they've put together to help us access a deposit and make home ownership more accessible for us. So when the new government comes on board, you know, we've got promises and big plans from both parties saying, you know, they're going to increase that incentive, they're going to increase the grants, or, you know, they're going to make it more affordable for us. So either way, the government wants us to get into home ownership, and this is, their scheme or their incentive to get us into the home ownership. And
Winston, I know you're an avid listener. Please make a decision soon so we can get more incentives or assistance in moving into our first home. In terms of, okay, then, so we've done the 3 years and, you know, nice big pot of gold there. Well, you know, ready to put on a home. We've chosen our home. So after that, and we've made a decision, how do we then access our KiwiSaver and our Home Start grant to be able to put towards a deposit?
So with KiwiSaver, you need to contact your provider and tell them that, hey, this is the situation. I found a house. I would like to use my funds. And they will hold you through the whole process. So those funds, and you can withdraw all the funds that you've saved up with the exception of about $1,000, which you have to leave in there. So it'll be your contributions, your employee contributions. All the investment returns will go back to you. They get sent over to your solicitor's trust account, so you don't touch that money. It'll sit there, and when the house sale goes unconditional, then the money will be transferred over. So, and then the other component with the Home Start grant, you need to contact New Zealand Housing Corporation. And they will also transact that portion of the money for you as well and get the lawyers speaking. It's
important as well to know that you know, to give them at least 10 working days for this process to happen. You know, like if you're putting an offer in, and you need to put that deposit down, this deposit or this process might take up to 10 working days. So try not to rush, you know, the settlement date and that kind of stuff when you're putting an offer in for a home. But, you know, you can do it for up to 6 months. You can get in touch with Housing New Zealand and your fund provider and get a letter and get kind of like this kind of pre-approval or get things sorted before you start putting offers in. And that way it's kind of like just a letter and it's ready to go by the time you get to that offer stage or acceptance stage.
Nice. So before we finish for today, just summaries from both of you, you know, the main things, main takeaways for our listeners and our viewers today regarding, you know, KiwiSaver or you know, Home Start grant, please. Amanda?
I'd say understand the numbers, you know what you can afford, get the proper advice, you know, look at review. One of the biggest, I deal in personal finance all the time. The biggest thing that I see is people forget about their money. They lose track on a daily basis. So have a fixed goal, be prepared, be organized. And, you know, if you've got a sort of medium to longer time frame and you're just starting out a young couple and that's your goal, like get in the right type of fund, understand how much you're paying in fees. Simplicity has the lowest fees of all KiwiSaver providers because those really, we're saving our members right now about $300 a year in fees. That's going to add up too as well. And get coordinated and organized. Just don't leave it to the last minute because like with anything, you know, you need to have a plan.
And for me, if you see the goal to buy a home, get into KiwiSaver straight away. If you're starting to work, if you just finished study and you're getting into work, and you get into KiwiSaver straight away. Don't opt out. Get into it. Get in at the highest rate. You won't see that 8%. You won't see that money, and over time it will just accumulate. So get into KiwiSaver. That's my first advice. Second advice: get in at the highest percent, 8%. And secondly, come and see us, obviously, to sit down and crunch the numbers because you don't know how close you might be with the extra 10 grand or 20 grand in regards to the grants, what you're eligible for. And let's hope the government, ups those incentives or grants for us once the new government's formed. And majority, 80% of our people are going to use KiwiSaver for their deposit. especially in a rising market or whatever happens in the market. As long as you've got this KiwiSaver or got this deposit ready, you're going to be well on the way to achieving home ownership.
A very big thank you, Andrew Lovell, Managing Director and Founder of Home Ownership Pathway, as well as Amanda Morale.
There's
Morale.
dispute in the family, but I'll go with Morale.
Morale, okay, Morale it is. Head of Communications and Education with Simplicity. Thank you both so much for your time this morning. And of course, we're going to put the website up for any questions that you can go and speak to Andrew or one of the team to help you, especially if you are, really close to that, getting into that first home. Thank you both so much and have a great day.
Thank you.
It is 10 minutes to 8. Our news at 8 o'clock coming up shortly here on Radio 531 PI, bringing Pacific people together.
Win cash with Digicel and support your favourite rugby